So our guest speaker for today is Miss Aviona Mabaso. So Aviona Mabaso is an influential and development-oriented legal manager with general legal knowledge, specializing in servicing the mining industry. She was named amongst Mining Review Africa's 2019 most influential women in mining on the African continent. In 2006, she graduated from Dana Hall School in Wellesley, Massachusetts, in the United States of America. She then enrolled at Wittenberg University in Springfield, Ohio, to begin her undergraduate studies. She, however, received her LLB from the University of Pretoria in 2013. In 2015, she was admitted as an attorney. Amongst many others, she has a certificate in prospecting and mining law from the University of the Witwatersrand, as well as a certificate in finance from Gibbs Business School, both in South Africa. Aviona began her legal career as a candidate attorney at Marvin Tabak Incorporated in 2014 and later transferred to Tabax, which is now Anderson, where she specialized in commercial mining. She later worked as the group legal counsel for Bulba Resources Limited. Aviona is currently employed with AngloGold Ashanti as a senior specialist legal for the African region. Aviona is currently studying for her MBA at Gibbs Business School in South Africa. So over the next 60 minutes, we'll be listening to the interview by Tobi, interviewing our guest speaker, Aviona Mabaso. Can everyone kindly welcome our guest speaker? Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. Thanks for that beautiful introduction. Welcome once again, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Tobi. Thanks for having me.
Great. Something we normally do here at AfriMine is that we like to welcome our guests by asking them to say hi to us in several languages that they can speak. We've had people who could speak about 6 to 7 languages, and they said hi to us in those languages. So don't let us scare you. Just let us know what languages you can speak and say hi to us in those languages.
Okay. All right. Hello. Bonjour. Hola. Sanwanani. Dumelang. Those are the ones I know.
Okay, thank you very much. So where are you based currently and where are you working from?
I'm calling from Ilovo Santon, so in Johannesburg. Specifically from Gibbs University. So that's where I'm doing my MBA.
Oh, nice, nice, great. Okay, so how has the journey been like for you pursuing an MBA?
What has it been like pursuing an MBA?
Yes.
Difficult. It's very challenging because it's there to make you a more well-rounded professional. So it really opens you up to other just other areas of study that you wouldn't ordinarily in your like chosen career paths or in law that I wouldn't have been exposed to. So I was a bit hesitant, not hesitant, but I guess my biggest fear was the financial and accounting side of things, that was going to come finally in all of my time of being a lawyer and sort of dodging that aspect. So I had to reckon with that, and it went. I mean, I didn't knock it out of the park, but I think it definitely made me a more well-aware potential executive, you know.
Great. So I haven't had all of the legal knowledge and experience and also learning about finances now. So should we assume that in the next couple of years, you're becoming a CEO?
Your mouth to God's ears, Nick. But
All right, that's cool.
um, but I mean that's the idea. The whole reason for doing an MBA and not, for example, a master's in law, and therefore maybe a doctorate in law potentially, was because at this point in my career, I've always known that I wanted to be a lawyer, but that I didn't want to be an attorney, as in I didn't want to be in practice in a firm. So I always knew that whatever happens, once I became sort of a professional in this legal space, it has to change and evolve, and that is to be part of the C-suite, and potentially not just from a legal perspective. I would want that to go on further to, yes, to being the CEO.
Perfect, perfect. So I guess that's why you had your other certificate courses in finance and also mining and mining related courses. Am I correct?
Yeah. So those courses were actually several years ago while I was still my early years studying. I think I don't know if I was still an article clerk or if it was like my first year as an associate attorney. But I knew very early on that I didn't want to pursue a postgraduate study until I had some more professional experience. You know, just some time for me to figure out what it is that I really wanted to do in what field and where I wanted to take my career. So the reason I even actually took the mining certificate course was because, oh yes, I think it was either the end of my second year as an article clerk or once I was retained as an associate. So I was then working, I knew I would be sort of working in the commercial mining space. So that's when I decided to take the course for commercial mining, because then I knew, okay, well, to be a little bit proficient, let me upskill my knowledge specifically in this law. But I honestly, I didn't go into this pursuing mining law. I didn't go to varsity pursuing mining law. That never really occurred to me. You know, I wanted to do, you know, IP, and sort of, I don't know, work for Facebook.
You just
um,
just before you start touching on why you decided to pursue mining and specialize in mining. So just let's go back a little bit. So why did you start to want to pursue law, for instance, from the start? So why law from the start?
Why law from the start? I was born in South Africa, born in Baragwanath Hospital in Soweto. I grew up in Kagiso. I went to a local township school, and you know, I saw a lot of things as a kid, be it just in the public arena, in our own family, things that happened, and from a young age, you know, moving to the United States when we immigrated, learning what an immigrant is, you know, the law started to play a really big role in our lives, and I kept noticing over and over again for all of my life that, you know, there's this thing that gets to make all of the decisions. It's not just what your mom wants or what whoever wants. So from an early age, I knew that I wanted to, at the very least, be able to navigate life from that perspective. And that's where the love for it grew, so that I would better be able to, I guess, understand and represent my interests and those of the people who I thought, you know, whose interests you would be fighting for. You know, at first when you're a child, that starts off as very personal. It's for your family and your friends. And then you grow older, and I was involved in things like Amnesty International, Oxfam. I did Model UN when I was in high school. Journalism, I did a bit of writing for the school newspaper, you know, so those sorts of things sparked my interest. And then eventually leading to, I mean, it was very easy for me by the time that I chose to go to university, what I wanted to do. But obviously in the United States, once you graduate from high school, they have that system where that you do 4 years of undergrad. So I started at Wittenberg University, but I was like, you know, for the amount of money And the amount of time, if I already know what I want, like, just let me study law. Like, don't make me jump all of the hoops. And don't get me wrong, I think that the liberal arts program is very, very good, especially for a lot of students who really have no clue at all, you know, what path they should take in life. I completely recommend a liberal arts education. But for those who know, I think it's a bit, it's not efficient. So after about a year and a half, I took a gap year, and then that's when I made the decision to pursue my law degree in South Africa. So I immediately packed up and I moved. I left my mom and my siblings, and I moved to Pretoria to live with my grandmother. And I started going to the University of Pretoria, studied law, and have not looked back since.
Absolutely. And we can see that it is something that you are joyous doing and finding fulfillment in it. So currently you work with Anglo American. What other companies have you worked
AngloGold.
with? Sorry,
AngloGold.
AngloGold Ashanti. My apologies.
No problem.
So what other companies have you worked with, either as you are growing your career in the legal space before you decided to come to work with a mining company? And what was the experience like in those places?
So my very first job was at a boutique law firm called Tabax. They're now called Andersons. They're here in Joburg, and that was an amazing experience. It really inspired me that, you know, because sometimes I think for some people, at least for me, when I left varsity and I was like, okay, right, now I've got my law degree, it was like, now you're looking for the inspiration to come from somewhere to be like, yes, this is the path. You know, is the path going to be the human rights path? Because I mean, you must recall, or at least I believe that most people who become lawyers because you want to fight for what's right. You know, you thought you were going to be slamming a brief and your honor this and your honor that, and you know, when you get out and then they say there's all of these other things you can do, then you really don't know where you want to start. So it was actually somebody recommended the law firm, and I looked them up. I did some vacation work there, which was really important, because it got me an opportunity to just see, you know, a little peek into how they work. And I did one there and actually at another firm about a week later. And I remember going to the other firm and immediately knowing that I would never want to do or to work at this sort of firm, but I would love to work at this firm. So when I finished my my degree, they actually phoned me, and they were like, "Hey, would you like to apply?" And I applied, and yeah, and I got to work there as a clerk and stayed there for 2 years. Lucky for me, it was a law firm that at least had a few departments that you could rotate through. So throughout the 2 years that I was an article clerk, then I moved through 4 different departments. So that was employment law, general corporate commercial, the mining commercial, and mining corporate, mining compliance, safety, mining health and safety, and environmental. So it really gave me a well-rounded view into, like, if you were a mining company, these would be your major interests, really, you know. And I think that is what gave me such a good background to fit into an in-house position. You know, because most people will have just one of those things. Either they'll have a very commercial background or very employment related background or a very very technical mining background, but it's I think it's quite rare to find all of the skills in one. And then from there, worked at a company called Boba Platinum. It's the first mining. I've only worked at 2 mining companies, but that's the first one. And that was, it was a really, really fantastic opportunity. It's a listed company, but it's quite a small mining company in terms of, you know, volumes on the general scale. But it was a great opportunity. It was because it was small and up and coming. everything was just starting to develop. So I was the group legal counsel. There was no legal department, so I really got to create a skeleton for what was to come. And you know, that was a lot of freedom that I got to have, you know. Then, which is quite different from obviously when I left there and went to now where I am now, AngloGold Ashanti, where you have this huge machine that's already there, and you now have to figure out how best to serve the pre-existing model of what's there. And obviously in a pre-done structure, there's so many components, and there's so many parts that I fit in order to assist my team. But yeah, so those are the two differences between the two companies. But yeah, so those are three companies I've worked for so
Absolutely,
far.
that has been an amazing experience. So, so from what you're saying, you said you were more like an entrepreneur when you were with the previous company, but now you're serving within an existing structure. So it's a full contrast. So you mentioned something earlier about the two divisions within within the law firm that you're working in prior. And
Yeah.
for so many of us who are listening, probably this is the first time we would encounter somebody who has a legal background. So tell us, are there other divisions within mining law, and what does it entail? We're just curious.
Yeah, look, the law, a career in law itself is as diverse as, say, a career in medicine. You know, there are so many different types of doctors, just as there are so many different types of lawyers. So in the mining space as well, you can be in compliance, you can be in the company secretarial department, or you can be in general commercial. And you know, because different companies have different needs, they also might different structure those needs differently. They may have 5 attorneys doing different things, and so on and so forth. But generally, those are the 3 needs that they satisfy from a commercial perspective, from a like a health and safety compliance perspective, a general commercial, and from a litigation perspective, if all of those, and procurement. Those are probably the most important parts, yeah, and procurement.
Okay, great. So if do you get a chance to interact with technical people in those positions? And which of them are you in currently? Do you mind if I ask? Which of the 4 divisions that you mentioned?
I actually wanted to mention at the end of my last statement that the other thing that's probably important to remember is that for mining companies, or for legal departments within mining companies, it's really a support function. So we round up our skills, but to help any other department within. So helping the engineers on the ground, helping everybody else have a foundation for what they do. You know, because a huge, can I call it, game in mining is regulatory compliance. It's checking those boxes and making sure everybody is safe. And then it's also obviously having your employment contracts in place, but it's also about having any offtake agreements, any procurement agreements that you need in place. And then you still need your company secretarial and your governance structures to be in place. And then you generally have someone overarching looking after all of those little bits and pieces.
So obviously you've had a well-rounded experience in all of those divisions that you've mentioned. Do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite?
Ooh. I think one of my favorites has to be probably litigation, but anything backward looking. So anything where you're gathering evidence and or trying to untangle what happened and how did something happen. Those I really, really like, you know, because you can go wild in terms of how you research and investigate certain things. So those are probably my favorite. Yeah.
So I guess in that role, one of the areas where you'll be most functional is probably when there are cases about accidents, community, entanglement. Am I correct?
Yeah, they
Great.
do. So, because my role is quite general, I do get involved in a little bit of everything. So a little bit of exactly what you just said as well. Yeah.
Okay. So do you mind sharing one experience with us, or it is not allowed?
Sorry, say that again.
Do you mind sharing an experience with us with one of those probably cases? You don't need to go in depth into them. Where you got
Into
involved. Any of the cases that you had worked on that had you looking back, just like you said.
I'm trying to think if there's anything I can talk about. No, I can't think of a good example that I would be allowed to mention.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. So I think at this point, I would like to tell our listeners that in case you have questions for Aviona, you can feel free to use the chat box, post your question there, and once we are done with this interview session, we would ask her your questions. So obviously, you've had a fantastic run at your job or at your career. Do you have memorable experiences that you want to share with us? And let us know what that is. And also, if you have not so memorable, you can also share with us.
Memorable experiences. You really don't remember. I mean, I've had a really great career and I've been lucky. I've been so lucky in my career that I've gotten to work with people who really took an interest in me and my career. So positive experience. I think every single time that there's a new initiative by the mine in the local communities, those ones are always good. And when they're education related, those are even better. So I've had, well, probably a few at my last short job, because obviously, since I've been working at Anglo, most of it has been during lockdown. So those don't really happen so much anymore, where, a ton of people are invited to these things. But yeah, it can be anything from, when they drop off school bags or food, or when they build new schools, or when they upgrade schools, or when they give new uniforms. Those are the sorts of things I like. Those have been the good moments. Because sometimes, sitting from our chairs, because we're not directly involved, you're not part of the engineering team on the ground, digging the stuff out of the ground. You feel a bit far removed from the work. Me and at my desk with with these contracts, with these after look backs. It's hard to see where you really fit in, but when those things happen, you at least remember that you're part of it. You're part of a team that facilitates and supports the other business units into actually doing these really wonderful things. So that makes it worth it.
Do you ever at any point want to go to the operations and just see what is happening there?
Yes. Oh, I actually should have said that. I think one of the primary reason I got into mining, besides the fact that I worked at a law firm that exposed me to these different areas, was because of all of them, that one was also the most practical looking one. Setting up mining companies were engineering wonders, something so far from law. I absolutely loved it. I made a point to visit all of our mines. Now, obviously, AngloGold doesn't have any mines in South Africa, but we are making plans for me to see the other ones on the rest of the continent that we have. But at my last job, definitely, I was there every opportunity, going underground as deep as possible to see how things are done, going into the plants, running. I absolutely loved it, donning like all of the safety gear, because I think that, especially when you're giving a support function, and so if I had to give examples of other professionals to give support functions, it would be like the finance department. That's a support function. You know, they don't create money. The finance department, as much as they might write up the books, they don't create the money. They manage it, and then there's the attorneys. The other ones would be HR is another example. So from that perspective, being a support function, it's important to know what is the work, you know, that is actually being done, and how, so you know how best to support it, so that, you know, when somebody is telling me about trying to make me imagine a little 9-meter crawl space, I need to be able to know what that looks like. If they're explaining, oh no, I want this sort of vehicle as opposed to this sort of vehicle, I sort of need to have an idea, you know, what they're talking about. If they talk about crushing and screening, I need to know that that's, you know, part of something in a plant. It doesn't happen underground, you know, open cast versus underground, and what sort of the different mines can have different sort of mining methods. Yeah, those sorts of things. So you need to at least be aware, and it makes it so much easier for you to do. And you're able to give practical solutions if you can visualize, because you've been there, you've seen these things, and you know how these things work. It's very, very important.
So we can just assume that in your next life, probably you would want to be an engineer, mining engineer, to be specific. Okay,
Definitely.
yeah, so we got a question from one of our listeners. It says, how do you manage your work and your life? Is there a work-life balance, and how do you make it happen?
There is a work-life balance, and it happens with a calendar. My partner and I live together, and he's an entrepreneur and extremely busy himself. We have a calendar on our refrigerator. We have a 365 calendar in the study. All the major things that we already know. So for example, because now I'm working and I've got school, every single one of my assignments, exams is in the calendar already for the whole year. It's been there since January. When we fill major things in, you know, the birthday went in, because you don't want to hear 2 weeks before the birthday I've had, no, you know, I didn't realize that such and such, no. So those major things we put in there as here's how it goes. And then you make sure that you be realistic about what you can fit in. Because what is most important is that you take care of your body and your mind, then you go to work so that you can make money to live a life, and then rest as much as possible. Sometimes it really means being selfish with your schedule and your time, which is hard. It's very, very, very hard. We all feel like we owe so much to the people in our lives. But if you truly want to take care of yourself in this fast-paced world, especially in those first, can I say, like 10, 15 years of really building your career and making a name for yourself, you got to be selfish. So at the moment, I have few friends. I'm not saying I'm proud of that, but it makes it easier.
Yeah,
It
true.
makes it easier to manage. Yeah, and I just keep my priorities very simple. I know it's work, school, my relationship with my partner, my friends, and my family, and that's it. Anything that's really not in there is not that. And I forgot to mention, obviously the first most important one is taking care of yourself, which means really prioritizing working out and eating healthy, because the rest of it actually doesn't matter if you really don't put that time in there for that stuff. And everybody's got busy lives and stuff, but if you're not prioritizing that, you're shooting yourself in the foot in the long run. Those things, I can't stress that enough. Those are the two most important things. Eating well, exercising, keeping your priorities short, sweet, and to the point. So I've had to drop a lot of stuff. I'm a Gemini, I think that means something. Gemini, and I'm a bit ADHD, so I've
Oh,
got
wow.
interests for days. I've got interests
Yeah.
galore. So really trimming that down and prioritizing is an important thing. So that's what I would say. Yes, you can have a life balance, but it's all about calendars, schedules, yeah, taking care of yourself.
So, while reading through your bio, and we also discovered that at some point you were a presenter. Do you still do that from time to time, or?
Oh, the radio thing. That was it was like a 6-7 month thing that I did back in varsity. It was again one of those chance serendipity thing. I just happened to have a friend who was a manager at one of the radio stations and was like, my presenter in this time slot dropped us and we want a session on this. Would you and another person be willing to? And we said yes. And it was really wonderful. So we had 2 hours per week to talk about youth development. I mean, what other better topic?
Absolutely,
I
it was
youth and I
preparing you
was
for things like
developing.
this. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so we have questions here from two people. The first is from Lukman and is asking, he said, I'm based in Obosi, Ghana, and my question is, as a young mineral metallurgy engineer, one of my field of interest is the corporate world of mining. Is there any advice you would give in order to at least know the channel to pass through as a metallurgical engineer?
Okay. In hindsight, because as I mentioned, that I happened to get into this career via the law firm that I was working at. But if I had planned this, and I knew I wanted to do it, like I guess most of you do know that. One is I would keep up on mining news. It's relevant to know, what are the top 10 mining companies where you live in your country, in your region. You need to know. I'd say it's important to try and attend as many of these conferences as possible. Because like I said, you never know who's looking, and quite truly I've gained a lot. I mean, this very conversation I'm having here, we met because I went to a conference. So there are a lot of money, and if you can find a sponsor somehow to attend one of those, I would highly recommend it. Learn to network. Learn to network through your professors. Learn to network through your alumni. Learn to you really would be surprised how willing people are to just have a conversation or to help you connect you, if you actually make the effort to reach out. Yeah.
Absolutely true. I can agree to everything you've said, because I've seen that you literally assist me in my career journey. So there's somebody also from, his name is Zul. Please, I apologize for not pronouncing your name well. Said as recently graduated from Maran University and secured a third rank in all over Faculty of Engineering. I want to know about my master's career. Sorry, your question is not clear. Would you mind rephrasing that we might be able to assist you? Are you asking if you want us to recommend a master's for you, or are you deciding to pursue a master's, or you want to work? Please let us know. So as a roundup, I would just like to ask, is there, if you are to start your career all over again, would you do it another way around, or do you think
No. Oh, I wouldn't. But with that said, I know that again, I've been very lucky, and therefore my story is one in a million. So let me maybe give a story. Well, before I give you that story, can I just go back to the answer from before? On something else you can do is, while you're looking up the mining companies that are in your country, in your area, in your region, or wherever else that you would like to work. See what sort of talks they host, because they do that a lot too, you know, either in conjunction with other companies. See if they are hosting any sort of career days, or be where they're going to be, so you can meet people from those companies if that's what you're really interested in doing. And somewhere a recommendation will lead you somewhere. I promise you, it really, networking is so important, and that goes for, doesn't even matter what career in this life. Networking is how you're going to get ahead. Networking, networking, networking. Not everybody needs to be a friend. You don't have to go and party with all of the, nobody, no. You have friends and you have a network.
Absolutely. So you said you were going to share a story. What story is that?
Sorry, you had asked me a question. Oh, I guess that's gone now.
Would you have your journey different?
Oh, would I do my journey any differently? No, I would not do my journey any differently. Oh, I was going to share a story of other people who have found themselves wanting to change, and where it's been okay. You know, I had a friend who was working in environmental health and safety, doing compliance work at a law firm. And one day she decided she wanted to be a tax lawyer. She studied for a master's in tax while she was working. And she pivoted, and she ended up only a few years later working her way to being a director in tax law. So I'm just saying that do not think that the decisions you make in the next 3 to 5 years are set in stone either. As long as your reputation precedes you, your money should stay the same.
Okay, I'm sure you've answered this earlier, but just for those who just joined us, there is one from Abdul Jalil asking why an MBA after a law?
Why an MBA?
Yes.
It's simple. I knew that I'm not going to be an attorney, as in I'm not going to be billing hours at a law firm. My career will be in corporate, in-house legal. If it wasn't in-house legal, and hopefully in the future, it'll be more CEO or much more general than that, operations related. And that is my reason. My reason is to make me a more well-rounded professional, more well-rounded executive.
So from your conversation, you did mention two things. One was you worked with a platinum mine, and currently you're working with a gold mine. Which of them do you prefer, or have you worked with other commodities?
Yeah. So which gold is lovely, because it's always in keeping with what's happening in the world. At least for as the last 200 years, or however long the financial system has been operating, gold has been there to mark certain things. On the flip side, copper is another one, because it's also a signal of, you know, that things are happening for you. Because gold is generally, you know, good when times are bad. Copper is usually good when times are good. Platinum is obviously, the platinum and chrome space is very important for the electrical space as well. So wouldn't. So yeah, those are probably the three. I wouldn't have a preference for a commodity, honestly, because like I said, I'm once you're in the support function, you support a mine, and rarely has what I'm pulling out of the ground really changed too much of the job. You know, once you know, like, okay, the basics of how a mine is run. Yeah.
Okay. Just a very funny question. Is it possible to flip from being an engineer or a metallurgist or a process person to law? Just like you are flipping from law to business now.
Oh, look, I do think that kind of change is possible. It's just much harder. And it really depends on the sort of foundation you set up for yourself to be able to do a change like that. And when I say foundation, I'm talking financially. Are you going to save the money to be able to work yourself? Because few employers, even in the mining space, even though maybe they should, but few employers, excuse me, are going to pay for you to pivot, to just completely change your whole career. Because you have to remember that they have to work with you through varsity so another 4 years. Then they have to work with you through you becoming a professional in that space.
Yeah.
That's another investment, and then you might turn around and leave them after. So you know what I mean? So if you're not going to fund that whole thing, that journey yourself, it's a very hard. But if you're just doing a tweak here and there, one kind of engineering to maybe more technology focused in the mining industry, those are a bit easier. But just a complete overhaul, those are much harder. Those are much harder.
Funny enough, we've had a guest here who had a degree in process engineering. He worked as a teacher, worked with one of the biggest mining companies in the world, then went to pursue a degree in law and a master's in law too. Amazing.
That is amazing. That is amazing.
So we have a question here. Should money be a motivational factor in making a career decision?
Oh. If money was a factor, law is not really. Honestly, if money is a motivational factor in having a professional career, and being an engineer, a doctor, and any of those, there is a ceiling. There is a ceiling. You're not going to own a private jet being a lawyer. It's just not going to happen. You know what I mean? So you'll have a nice house, you'll send your kids to a nice school, you will survive waves of inflation a little bit for a while, you'll be good. But you are not going to be rolling in it by any measure. Only entrepreneurs can do that. And when I say I'm talking not even directors at some of these major law firms, unless it's like the top 2 law firms in the United States, or in the UK or something. But other than that, on average, none of them are chartering jets or doing any of those things. So if money, and I mean serious money, is a motivational factor for you, none of those. Don't be a professional. Chase it. Go and make something. Go and be an entrepreneur and be innovative and create something. You will make a lot more money doing that.
Right. So you said, so we have one from Emmanuel saying, how has your journey been, a woman in a male-dominated industry?
I think it was odd at first not knowing where to place yourself, because there'll be little things, like for example, you'll get to work on Monday morning and one of the male partners might walk by and you're standing next to a male counterpart, someone else on your same level, and the conversation is going to be, did you see that game? That immediately excludes you. You're done. Morning coffee conversation, you are not part of it. Little things like that. But luckily, though, in the same breath, I was working at spaces where we were allowed to voice how we felt. We were allowed to be blunt. So I learned to be to be honest. and try and be a little bit humorous and witty about it, which I know they say sometimes you just need to be blunt, but like it worked for me. So for example, you know, whereas maybe in my first year as a candidate's attorney, if they started a whole conversation about soccer and I felt I couldn't participate, I might have left. But 2 years later, I would have been like, seriously, guys, like, is there anything else in this world we can talk about except soccer? You know what I mean? You start like making a space for yourself, and really being part of yeah, the assertion we need to make to be part of the spaces, in an authentic way, whatever your own authentic way may be. You might not be as boisterous as me to say something like that out loud, but but in whatever way you can find, try and create a space for yourself. That's all I can say. And I can say that there's a lot of awareness in companies. I mean, and there's a lot of awareness in general in the times that we're living in about how men should be treating women, and you know, some of the equalities and fears we face in these male dominated industries. So there's a lot of awareness, and especially in the big companies, they make a lot of effort to do, you know, education and to make sure that we're all, you know, making each other feel welcome and build a more inclusive workplace. It really does happen. And that I've been lucky to work at places where that is an ongoing conversation and an ongoing goal. So yeah, that's the thing. You just have to really, yeah, you have to own the space. Take up the space, as they've been saying. You have to take it up.
Absolutely. Great. So we have one too from Cabello saying, let's talk about finances. How is the salary? Please, you can
I
decline
think
if you
how
want
is
to.
the salary is next to the motivational factor. Okay, if you want to know numbers, because they vary across broad scales and companies, but look up, really go on Google and look up salary of blah blah blah, and you will see the scales. And most of these companies, the big ones at least, excuse me, always say that they use these scales to determine or whatever, and they try and operate a current market. So you really can't get a feel for maybe what you can try and be shooting for, and negotiating for. But it really varies from company to company. And I have to say that because uh salaries aren't an open and public discussion really anywhere yet. It is such a difficult thing to answer, because I really can't even tell you how much faith and reliance I place on those very things I'm trying to tell you to go look at. And honestly, the only real and honest truth that I've ever seen when it comes to salaries is, I don't know if anybody has seen that Twitter, that there's that Twitter handle that's revealing salary discrepancies at certain companies in the UK. I don't know if you know about it, but yeah, and now I think it's becoming a law there that those sorts of things have to. And I think in New York you have to now advertise the salary pay on the job post. So I think movements like that, and obviously, I mean, we're in South Africa, hopefully, and we're on the continent. Hopefully, we're not too far behind with that level of transparency. But until we know that, that is still a very difficult question, I say. But you're not going to starve. You know, you will make enough money to feed your family, to live in a nice house, to do all of those things, to have a vacation once or twice a year, you know, to be able to save a little bit and maybe give back to your family. Not living lavish, but you will make it. I don't know if that answers your question.
Absolutely, you did answer the question. But talking about the Twitter handle that you did mention, the one I've sent is the one on Instagram, but it is based in the US. So what they do is they carry mics all around the street and ask people, how much do you earn, what's your position, and what do you do in this position. So that one is it's a little similar to what you just said. So I think our last question for today is coming from Abdul Jalil again, asking, you've mentioned some of it, the top 5 skills needed to thrive in the mining industry, not in the global workspace, but in the mining industry.
Mm. Skills. Skills. Probably, I mean, speaking mining lingo is a skill you should probably have. You know, when people throw out these terms, and if you don't know them, you should probably ask and or look it up. Because luckily, at least they like I said, they go regardless of commodity. Most of the terms are the same. But it's important to know. That's one. Second one. Ooh, I would say that it's important to know, even if you're not in the legal space, it is important to know the laws that govern your profession in that space. You know, be able to speak to it so that if you ever even get some sort of memo from an attorney's firm, you know what they're referring to when they just refer to some act. You know which act it is because it matters directly to you and what you do. So if you're an engineer and you're working underground, I assume something like there would be some sort of like Mine Health and Safety and Environmental Safety Act that you should just know. No one, not like know it back and forth and be able to quote sections, but just read it a few times. It's English. Law's not that special.
Well, probably you would have a tutoring school where we can come and learn how to read legal languages or legal English.
You know, they try and they're more and more they're trying to make the law that much more accessible and easier to read. And reading legislation is a skill. And when I say skill, is in it's something that you have to do a few times, and then you're like, oh, okay, so you read it like this, and this is what you can expect. But it's intimidating because of the print they put it in and how they write it. But it's actually not very long. And like I said, at the end of the day, it's English. It's not like picking up an engineering document. That would be difficult, you know? You're not picking up something from the chemical engineer space where they're like, you know, SiSO, whatever sodium means, I don't even know. You're not reading anything like that. It's English. It is much easier to understand than any of these other ones. There's no complicated theory behind it. You know, they're not like organizational behavior and throwing out these random terms. It should make sense to you.
And on that
Just
note,
that. Is that 3? Or am I done?
yes. All right. So on that note, we'd like to say thank you very much, Aviona, for honoring the invitation and also for answering all these questions. You know, for me, I think if I'm to go away with something from this conversation, it would be that law is not scary. Read anything that is legal that pertains to you within any organization, particularly within mining. And I think it's something everybody too can take away from that. So on that note, we'll just round up this interview session and we'll move on to the next session. Thank you, Aviona. We hope that the next time we'll have you would be in that CEO position, then we can ask for favors.
Yes.
All right. Have a good one.
Thank you very much. Thank you
You're
for
welcome.
having me. Thank you. Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.